my audience. And these are my cards. First one, second, third, fourth. When my family and I first learned that my brother has autism, our first reaction was to cry. Other than a few symptoms that made us realize something was unusual about his behavior, we didn't know much about autism. The idea of dealing with a problematic child scared us. There were many allegations going on the internet, which scared us even more. But how many of those allegations are actually true, and is autism something we should fear? Autism is a neurological disorder that affects a child's life, has many symptoms, and there are several ways to interact with an autistic child. I have been taking care of my autistic brother for the past year, so I am well knowledgeable about it. And it is important for you to be knowledgeable as well, since it becomes more widespread every day. Firstly, I will talk about what autism is and some myths about it with scientific evidence. Secondly, I will discuss some traits of an autistic child. And lastly, I will give a few suggestions to interact with an autistic child. Autism spectrum disorder, which we shortly call autism, is a complex developmental disorder which impairs the ability to interact and communicate. While it affects the nervous system, it also gives children difficulties with social skills, repetitive behaviors, speech, and nonverbal communication. According to Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the prevalence estimate of autism is 27.6, which is 1 in every 36 children. And according to the same report, it is 3.8 times as prevalent as among boys, it is as among girls. There are many myths going on about autism. The first one, and probably the most popular one, being autistic children are unintelligent. According to National Library of Medicine, a clinical study made with children reported that 23% of them had below average IQ, 45% of them had average IQ, and 32% of them had above average IQ. So we cannot say this myth is completely true. Next myth is autistic children can't feel emotions. Well, that's a lie. They can feel emotions, but they cannot express them as easily as others. They are having problems with understanding the facial and emotional expressions. They don't have problems with feeling them. And lastly, bad parenting causes autism. This theory got so popular because of the refrigerator mother theory, which is also known as Bettelheim's theory of autism. This theory suggested that lack of maternal care caused autism. In easier words, if a mother is cold, uncaring, neglectful towards her child, that child might develop autism. This theory was debunked by later research. According to an article, inherited and de novo genetic risk for autism impacts shared networks. For most cases, there are various genes that causes autism, and it cannot be developed later in life. Now we know what autism is and the myths. Let's talk about some autistic children traits. We're going to start with communication and interaction skills. Lacking eye contact. Failing to show facial expressions such as happiness, sadness, anger, or shock, surprised. No to few gestures and not responding to name are autistic children behaviors. Next is restricted or repetitive behaviors and interests, which are lining up objects and getting mad when the order changes. Repeating specific words or sounds over and over. Following spinning objects such as wheels of a car. Having to follow the same routines every single day. Rocking body, and what I observed on my brother the most is hand flipping. There are some related characteristics as well, such as delayed speaking and movement skills, hyperactive, impulsive, or inattentive behavior, lack of fear, or having more fear than expected, constipation issues, and eating food only with a specific texture, usually blended. And lastly, we're going to talk about 2 ways to deal with an autistic child. There are many effective ways to interact with an autistic child, some of them being using limited words, speaking clearly with small gestures, and using positive reinforcement, which is rewarding the child for the good things he or she did, are helpful ways. But the most important thing when taking care of an autistic child is patience, patience, patience. It will never get easier to deal with an autistic child. But the more they are treated negatively, the more aggressive they will become. So it is important to stay positive, take breaks, and seek professional help if needed. Firstly, I talked about autism and myths about it with scientific evidence. Secondly, I discussed some autistic children traits. And lastly, I talked about a few suggestions of interacting with an autistic child. Autism is a neurological disorder which has many symptoms that affects a child's life, and there are several ways to interact with an autistic child. So, instead of marginalizing and making fun of autistic children, as a society, we should acknowledge their special needs and embrace them. Thank you. My cards. First, second, third, fourth, and my audience.
Good job.
Thanks.